excited to be back. And actually,
Yeah.
today is an awesome day. We've got our first guest, the Brian North, which
El Norte.
I love this guy.
Norteño.
I love everything that he stands for in our industry as a person. So we have no idea where this conversation is going to go, but we just wanted to kind of go back and forth. So, Brian, introduce yourself a little bit. I mean, I can talk for days about you. It's kind of a man crush for me.
I love it, dude. It goes both
Did
ways.
you guys want me to leave the room?
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
That would be, no, you're the saving grace here. Are you kidding? You can smell the two of us. You help equalize it. You know what I mean? So, introduce Brian North. Let's see. It's funny. We did a webisode series for the brokerage a month or two ago, and somebody said, Brian, introduce yourself, your job title, and I started laughing, and I said, my name's Brian North. I don't really much believe in job titles because they don't do anything for the human. But if I had a job title, it would probably be micro adventurer who travels the world and creates impact on anybody he comes in contact with. That would be my job title, right? And we sat here riffing about my micro adventures, right? I'm jump in the car and head out and maybe go to Mammoth today, that kind of thing. And then along that way, I'm going to meet a bunch of people. Spontaneity. I read something in Tribal Leadership, Tim Ferriss's book, and it was one of the little kind of teachings or lessons in there. And it said spontaneity is the sister of creativity. And, for those who are regimented in their lives and live square by the calendar, I challenge anybody to test the life of spontaneity, the gift of spontaneity. And when we do these trips where we leave quickly, these micro adventure trips and make impact on anyone we come in contact with, it would be very of the spirit that I know that you guys are. And Steve, I know I've watched you give. I mean, so much of the reason you receive as much as you do is because of the way that you give. And it's, meeting the little old lady and the rascal in the supermarket that's stuck and can't get her way out, and stopping and taking time to not only help her get her rascal out of the way, but ask her how her day is and just spend a couple minutes with her, and do that with everybody we come in contact with between here and Mammoth Lake and all the way back, So
yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up because so many people you hear, the white space is enemy.
Yeah.
Right. So if your calendar's not full, you have too much time to not be full, where you're kind of the opposite, like leave a little bit of white space in there for spontaneity, because if we're so busy trying to go from thing to thing, we don't have the time to. What did we do a couple months ago, Kyle, where you had to stop, change those people's tire on the road? And if you were too busy to go from appointment to appointment, you don't have those opportunities to give at the end of the day.
Oh man, I'm reading, meditating, studying, and being coached on the value of creating space in your life right now. The simplest way to think about white space in your life is that it offers an opportunity for something new to show up, right? So I've taken this metaphor and into every space in my life. It started about 3 weeks ago. I walked into my closet and I took a box and just took every single thing all those shirts that I'm like, no, I'll wear that when I get dressed up one day, never again. You know what I mean? And just every shirt, every pair of shoes, it was probably 60% of my closet.
That's awesome.
In the spirit that it made space for something new to show up, a new me, a new way. Maybe it's all black and white t-shirts. I'm going to be Mark Zuckerberg and wear one color t-shirt for the rest of my life so I don't have to think about it and all those kinds of things. And then I went down, next thing, same thing with my garage. Everything in my garage I ever said, boom, just liquidated everything then moved to my kitchen, everything in my kitchen. And it's
Brian looks like that scene on The Accountant where there's just one fork, knife,
yeah, that's exactly right.
One cup.
Well, and remember though, but it's also not in the spirit of minimalism. It's in the spirit of creating space so that something new can arrive, so that something new. If my silverware drawer is full with old stuff, then there's no new anything that can come in there, right? It's full. And then it transcends into life as well. And so for me right now, the other day, Stephanie, my business partner, she's like, Brian, we're really working hard to create time in your calendar. You've just been the busiest guy in the world for so long. Yeah. How are we doing? And in front of my whole executive team, I said two things, and one felt really good and one was really scary. One was, I have so much time in my calendar right now. There are often, many times throughout a week, that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I really don't know. I'm like, what should I do right now? And I'm looking around like, this doesn't feel very good. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And then the second thing was, I said yesterday I went home at 2:00 and took a nap. right? 2:00 in the afternoon, like went and took a nap. And I'm really trying to listen to my body. That was my, conversation that you guys maybe overheard on Clubhouse with one of my coaches, Alf Wintis. And, my body's screaming at me right now. My joints hurt. I got lower back pain. I got to get shoulder surgery. I mentioned, on both my shoulders. I mean, all kinds of stuff going on. And just trying to create that space and that time to just kind of sit.
Oh my gosh. It's such, so different from like just a couple years ago, because you were on the road traveling, all the speaking. You literally had no time ever.
Zero.
It was like, I have 30 minutes for coffee.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I had every single second I could extract something from. I mean, I had transitioned to where like I only checked email on the plane. That was I didn't check email anywhere else because I had to maximize on the ground minutes. But also I realized that on the plane was a perfect time because no one could get to me. Yeah. So like I couldn't get distracted. I could hammer through 200 emails in an hour and a half. I mean, that's, 60%, 70% I'm deleting, and then the balance of, I'm actually answering. But it was like
were those availability emails?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that house available? Do you have any offers on it?
No, thank God. We've got myself out of those emails a long time ago, but you get my point. So no, but it was, literally where every single second was manicured. Totally. And now I'm like,
now
there's
you're
all
like
this
taking
weird,
a nap
there's this weird empty space, which is, and it won't be that way forever. I can share that with you guys. This is a creation of space, a lot of space to create awareness for what's next. Yeah. Because what I've been doing for the last 15 years is not what I'm going to be doing anymore for the rest of my life.
Right. So what are you reading right now?
A ton. You should see in my car. I literally had my briefcase and like 7 books with me today. And part of what I was going to do is I was on Clubhouse, so I was going to come sit in your parking lot for the hour I was on Clubhouse. And if I had any dead time, read. So I'm reading right now. I just was told I'm not saying his name right, but it's a Buddhist Rinpoche named Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm not saying it right, but that's how I've always said it. And the book's called How to See. It's a little pamphlet, really, and it's really about how to see the world in a far deeper way. The very first page in the book says, if you don't see the clouds in this page, then you can't see yet. And the idea is that the clouds have to produce water, that produce rain, that water the soil, to grow the tree, to make the paper, to print the paper, to get the ink, to write it. And if you can't see the clouds in the paper, then you're not yet connected enough to the paper to understand it. So that's How to See. I'm finishing Tribal Leadership. I just started.
That's a good book.
Tools for Titans. Mm-hmm. I'm reading that one now. I'm reading a book called Blue Fishing, which is about power networking. Really, it's more than that, but power networking is what I would reference it as. It's a fun, easy read. I'm reading Art of War, which I'm obsessed with right now. I freaking love it. It's my second time reading it, and it applies perfectly to what I'm up to in my business life. I'm reading Sapiens. I'm reading daily. I read the Daily Stoic, which is it's a daily lesson from Seneca and Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus is what I don't know. I'm not saying it right. So I'm reading that. I'm reading the Bible right now for the first time, like really reading it. I joked with a friend the other day who's like, "Really, dude, you're reading the Bible?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's one of the best books I've ever read." Like, it's a great book.
I mean, it's got a lot of drama in there.
I'm really enjoying. I'm really enjoying reading the Bible. What else? I know there's a couple others. I just finished The Prophet for the first time, which is a great one. Beautiful, beautiful book. Yeah. Wild at Heart, I'm listening to on Audible. Have you guys heard Wild at Heart? It's really about the value of being a man hunter, right? That first world society has kind of stripped away some of our innate identity with manhood and masculinity. And so that's interesting for me because I have challenged myself toward femininity. I mean, my executive team is 11 women, and I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of my feminine side as it relates to my relationship with my children and things like that. But then there's this part when someone recommended this book, like, I think you should read it. I think it would be powerful for you. And I was 5 minutes into it and was like, oh, yeah. So I'm digging
that's a topic you could go down a whole rabbit hole with. I mean, you've got 2 boys. I've got 2 boys. Bernie's got 2 dogs.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I remember my dad was really big into, this ministry we're involved in when I was younger, it's about fathering the fatherless, because so many kids are without that masculinity influence.
Yeah. For sure.
Which has
that was me.
taken
My
its
dad loved
toll on
me.
society.
He wanted to be there, but geography was our challenge.
Right.
So it was a tough one. One last one I'll share with you that you guys would love it is I'm listening to on Audible. It's called Power Moves, which I'm loving as well. Nice. It's just about a shift of power in the corporate architecture from hierarchical Machiavellian power monger to collaborative communal based
like
power leadership. So there you go. There's a small library I'm up to right now.
Well, good luck reading all those.
But you know what it is I have them all. They're all there, and I read every day. And it's really just, what am I called to? Sometimes it's that business thing, which would be Tools of Titan, Stride to Leadership. Sometimes it's my soul, which would be how to see in the Bible. Sometimes it's, just overall self-auditing, self-awareness. That might be Wild at Heart. So it really is just kind of what's called to me. And then I'll just, pick that one up and knock out 10 or 15 pages here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're the discipline junkie.
Yeah, I took that off recently.
I noticed.
Yeah,
That's why I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So there was a little shame in my game, really is what it was. So what Bernie's referencing is that my title on my bio for my Instagram was Discipline Junkie. And I've not been living up to it personally, and I'm not one to be a hypocrite. And there were just some challenges in my own personal life that I wasn't living up to the discipline that I really wanted to. And so I had to change it. I couldn't claim something that I wasn't. Right. So, I was going through a bit of self-doubt and a bit of judgment around it. And so I changed it for the time being, and I'll bring it back. But I wasn't going to.
What does it mean to you?
Discipline junkie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just somebody. I mean, look, I think for me, it's there. Everybody's got a great idea. You could sit in a room with 100 people that'll raise their hand and tell you, I think this is a great idea. Mm-hmm. And there's probably going to be 1 or 3 people out of 100 that are going to write down an action item.
Right.
And then there's going to be 1 of the 3 who go take the first step. And then there's probably, out of the 200, the one that took the first step, there's going to be 1 that has the discipline to actually carry it out to the finish line. And, discipline's it's a tough thing. It requires grit. And
so I think that kind of ties in with, where we started, talking about the white space and talking about the ability to move and be spontaneous, because I think that especially in the real estate industry, we get so pigeonholed into doing the same thing and trying to create that discipline where we don't have any room to grow. We don't have any room for new. I was talking to somebody yesterday about the same thing. I'm like, if I had just stayed doing what my dad had taught me, which was, in the, team space and the buyers and sellers, it would have never opened up for any creativity in what my business grew to, nor would it have allowed me to shift as the market shifted. And I think so many people, you can be so disciplined that it actually becomes a negative part of your life because you don't leave any room for that ability.
Yeah.
100%. I'm so much so, and it's funny, right? This is how bad I am to myself. This is how hard I am on myself. When I hear you saying that, I'm like, no, I am disciplined. Like, look how much space I'm putting. Like, do you know how much discipline it takes to create that much space when you've been somebody who was a minute monger, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I have all the minutes in the world. I'm not doing anything with those minutes, yet that's not discipline. Discipline is, so it's like you play these mental tricks on yourself. And so there's a part for me where I'm hearing you and I'm like, actually, I am kind of winning the discipline game to create that space. And that's, I think, exactly what does create what's next for people.
Because you've disciplined yourself to give up the things that, you didn't want to do or could get somebody else to do for you, which opened up free space, which opens up creativity. Yep. And I think that that's part of where the discipline is, because we're all, especially in the real estate business, we're kind of class A control freaks. Yep. Totally. And you think that nobody else can do it better than you can. And until you have the discipline to let that stuff go. Yep. Yeah. So, talk a little bit of, okay, guys, if you didn't know it, because he didn't really introduce it, Brian runs one of the most badass brokerages here in Phoenix. The marketing, the team, the tribe, the different things that you've done inside your culture. I've had the pleasure of speaking to that culture and doing a lot of different deals with those guys. And actually, in order for me to meet and actually get to know Brian, I think I donated $7,500 to a charity so I could have an hour of his time. Like, well, that's how I'm going to get in front of him.
Yeah, that's true.
And, but I mean, you talk about giving. What were those things that you first started giving up? And I think that that's where a lot of people get into the traps of discipline where they're afraid to give things up. So speak a little bit to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing, if I go back to those days, I had very like you said, very type A, very I had a fighter type approach to the way that I did business. You know what I mean? It was a contrarian. I mean, I had to, everything, it had to be hard, right? Like I was one of these that like nothing good comes without hard work, right? Kind of thing in life. And when I think back to those days about giving things up, I remember one of my mentors simplified it to like, what's the highest and best use of your time, right? We've heard that.
Same old.
And then the really like unattached version of that was like, what's the number one money-making task you can do in a day, right? Which is like, again, very like now. But then it worked for me because I could prioritize all of my activities based on, is this making me money? Which is not at all the way I think about business now. At the same time, it definitely worked in that space for me. And so I was, and remember though, if I back up, why was I so attached to making money? Let's start there, right? There were two reasons. One, I was terrified of being broke. Terrified, mortified. I mean, shaking my boots, make me sick to my stomach, have $500,000 cash in my checking account and clipping coupons.
Yeah.
Didn't we just have that conversation about
terrified of being broke.
Right.
And so for that reason, I was willing to eliminate things that couldn't make me money. So I'd love to be like, well, because I'm an entrepreneur and that's what I do. You know what I mean? That's what entrepreneurs do. You know what I mean? I'm Harvard Business School of whatever. You know what I mean? Like, no, I was scared. You know what I mean? That's why. And then, the second thing was I wanted to surf.
Yeah.
I did. I wanted to surf. And so for me, I was so attached to those two outcomes, financial security and more surf time, that if there was something that wasn't making me money to provide financial security so that I could create time to surf, then I wasn't going to do it. And I was better than anybody else at everything I was ever going to do. And I just had a conversation with a colleague of ours that we know, somebody we highly respect in this industry that's a power salesperson, right? They're a solo show. They sell 100 units themselves a year. And we were having a conversation about their business. And I was like, you need to hire a showing agent. Right? Like if you're going to keep being a solo agent team, which I love this model, by the way, you need to hire a showing agent because it's where you're spending. If I look at your work week, you're spending up on the dry erase board here, you're spending 30 hours a week showing homes. And their reaction to me was, but I love showing homes. And I was like, and I love cold calling, but I don't do it anymore because I like surfing more.
Yeah.
Right. I love going on listing appointments, but I don't do them anymore. Because I love hanging out with my kids more, right? I love buyer consultations, but I don't do them anymore because I love surfing more, right? I don't show homes anymore because I love going on micro adventures, impacting people more. So until people can come awake to what is serving themselves, that's really where the difference of starting to give things up is. Because the fact is, the power player who's doing 100 deals is the best.
Sure.
The power player is playing a trick on themselves, though. And the trick is that whoever the person is they're going to hire isn't going to be good enough that the consumer client doesn't know that they're not equal to the power player.
Right.
And if the person they hire and they train them well enough is only 83% as good as the power player was, the consumer's not going to know the difference, and they have to fall in love with that so they can go do whatever it is that they love more, right? And that person I sat across and said, really, do you love showing homes more than you love hanging out with your dogs? Do you love showing homes more than you like hanging out with your significant other? Do you love showing homes more than you like going to do whatever else it is you do? Don't lie to me. I know the answer is no.
Right.
And so
not in this market.
Yeah, no doubt.
Do you think that you've always been that way? Because I feel like for the time that I've known you, your ideas and how you act in your business are always been different than what everybody else is doing, right? So whatever was of the moment, like if it was a distressed market, you were out working on high net worth individuals and luxury. If it was, I mean, even the marketing for North & Co., the backwards head shot, right? It's the back of your head. Like, I feel like you've always innately had this thought process that was completely different than kind of what other people are doing.
Yeah, I love it. You know, I think so. I don't know where it comes from, but I definitely have had a little more patience than most of my colleagues. Meaning, I say to Stephanie oftentimes, and I don't know for this to not sound cocky or whatever, right? But I say to Stephanie, I'm like, Stephanie, I've gone and like peered behind the bushes and I've seen over there and I'm coming back to tell you what it looks like. Trust me, it's going to be like that when we get there. That's a joke. Like, she's like, let me guess, you've seen behind the bushes. I'm like, yeah, you know, like,
well, it sounds like
Yeah.
a parallel. You've been reading the Bible again.
Yeah,
You went and
yeah.
scouted the land of milk and honey.
It's so funny. And I don't,
chapter, yeah.
Is it?
Chapter
Yeah.
of the Bible.
Yep.
And so, no, but I've said that often, right? Like I have this ability to, see into the future a bit, which is by way of this is art of war, right? Process the terrain
Right.
and process the weather,
Yep.
right? And so assess the terrain, assess the weather. And so for me, it's like right now, what's the weather? We're in a drought. We're in a drought right now in real estate.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Yeah.
to sell,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? There's no crop, right? We don't have any corn. There's a drought. So what do you do in the drought right now, right? What do you do when there's a drought? And now we've got to start to formulate that.
Sure.
Right. And there's going to be some ideas that we come up with and you're going to go, oh, it's so contrarian. Right.
Right.
No,
Let's
instead
say
of me, what I have here, I'm going to theorize with you guys about myself. Right. Because I don't care about money. I care about money for security, but I don't care about money for things.
Right.
Right. And because I really don't care about money isn't attached to my legacy or who I am as a human being. And for that reason, it gives me a freedom to think about decisions in business different than a lot of people. And so if last year I had my greatest year ever, which we did as a company, and me personally had my best year ever, it's pretty easy to wake up on January 1st and be like, I'm just going to keep making a shit ton of
Right,
money.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But because I'm not really thinking about the money on a regular basis, I mean, I have to track numbers as a business owner. I have to know where I'm going and where I've come from. But when I love the creative artistry of business, I also have 200 mouths to feed. And I also internalize that I have 200 mouths who have 200 significant others who have 1, 2, 3, or 4 children.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I'm probably responsible for 1,000 people or more at the end of the day, right? Not to mention, we did, this isn't a tout, but 2,000 transactions last year.
It's okay
And
to
there's a significant other or a family that's involved in that. I mean, we probably had an impact at North & Co. on 5,000 or 10,000 people by the time that it's all said and done. And so when you think about those decisions, it's my responsibility as a leader to assess the weather. We're in a drought. And assess the terrain. It's dry out there. And then to think about, and then it's assess the troops, right? Assess the personnel. And if I assess the personnel and I go, we're at war and there's a drought and I'm marching my people into war right now, I've got to think about how to protect them in the future. I didn't read The Art of War 7 years ago to be able to describe it in this path, but I will tell you I was doing exactly the same thing then that I am now innately. Yeah. And it was this process of being able to go, because I'm not, look at me, I'm making it rain, you know what I mean? Like, I'm getting rich, look at what I did. Because I'm not doing that, I was really always paying attention to what was next. And then it was, okay, there's a drought. How do we create inventory? Oh, you cold call. And then for me, it got into granular tactics, right? It got into strategy, and it was like, okay, if I'm hearing 9 or 10 people cold call this way, what's the way that we can tweak that just a little bit so we can get a better, more actionable result and play around with that a little bit? And so, for whatever, I don't know where that came from, probably fear. If I'm being honest, you know what I mean? When you're in fight or flight,
sure.
Yeah.
You're always, for me, I grew up scared. And then in my middle adult years, I was scared. And then here I am now, probably to some degree still scared of something different. That fear has probably afforded me an opportunity to have clarity and have a certain, I'm looking through the periscope at all times,
I would have never thought that it would be that fear factor.
Always.
Because I feel like you're super creative. And so sometimes I think that contrarianness comes from just, okay, well, everybody's doing it this way. I wonder if we did it this way, what would happen? As opposed to it being kind of,
Well, remember, I mean, there's two type. When fear happens, there's fight and there's flight. Okay, what's my way?
Fight.
So always fight.
I fight.
Yeah.
I run into the war, right?
Totally.
I'm just as
You
scared.
do
I'm
for
just
everything.
as scared as the person who's running away. I'm equally scared.
Yeah.
But my DNA is to run into the fight when I'm scared and to run out of the fight. But I'm no better. It's just my choice. You know, I wish I would run sometimes. You know what I mean? I wish I could go find a really safe place to hide sometimes. I've been saying for a long time. So I'm like, man, I mean, your business, like, you know, what if you wanted to get out at some point? You know what I mean? And I was like, well, let me explain to you where I'm at in my business life right now. It's kind of like that guy who hiked the 3,000 El Capitan in Yosemite, Alex Honnold. You know, you get to a certain point, you can't go down.
Right. True.
You can't be like,
Yeah.
this is scary. The
Right.
wind picked up. My knuckles are, getting tired. My palms are sweating. Like, I have no ropes.
There's no turning back.
I can't go back down. I can only look up, bite down on my teeth, and keep climbing, right? And I wish I could go down. You know, I wish I could find a little spot to just sit and take a break for a second. But I didn't design it that way. So
I think one of the things that, that I was very intrigued by getting you here as the first guest was, I think watching you over the years and from when we met and you opening the brokerage and, being in the wholesale business and doing some of those things during the short sale days, you always had the ability to shift and think outside the box, which is what this podcast is about. I mean, what caused you to constantly, is it that fight or flight to constantly looking outside what everybody else is doing? You talked about looking over the bushes and peering through.
Yeah.
So what drives you to just get outside of the box?
I have a disdain for status quo. You know what I mean? It's
I
like,
love it. It's so true.
we all have a choice to wake up every day and make a difference in this world. And like 98% of us are ants in an ant farm.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, man, like if somebody would just make a choice to do something a little different. And, this industry, we are responsible for so much power, decision-making, changing. I mean, we're responsible for people's dwelling, their shelter.
The most expensive thing they will ever buy in the world. And
the most important thing in the world.
Right.
Look at us. We don't have fur. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have the ability to,
Bernie doesn't. Bernie's not wearing her fur today.
But, we don't have, rhinoceros skin. We don't have, we are, think about how important shelter is for a human. We're fragile. We're one of the most fragile creatures on the planet. We're responsible for shelter. You know what I mean? And then you think about the barrier to entry to this business,
Totally.
I mean, it's like $1,000, 90 hours of seat time, no disrespect to anybody's car, but a fancy car, a nice suit, and some nice loafers, some shoes. You get my point, though. I mean, it's because we made it, dude.
Yeah.
I know.
You know what I mean? When you make it, you get to wear a T-shirt. Isn't that oxymoronic?
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, hold on a second. You got to go overspend and overfake it on some bull to get a chance to make a difference for somebody. And then when you make it, you get to be yourself.
Right.
None of that makes sense to me, and it never has. And so for me, it's like, look, at the end of the day, it's identifying in our industry what is needed, what is necessary. Good dealings, right? You're on the other end of a phone with a fellow real estate professional. Treat them like a professional. They're going through it too. And not everybody has a good fortune of making a good living in this business. Right. And who knows what's going on in their life and how bad they need this deal. Yep. So good dealings, right? Open communication, have good communication, pay attention to the details. There's a lot of moving parts. Thorough follow-up, making sure that, you're getting to the conversation that your client wants to have where they're worrying before they bring the conversation to you. Knowing your market, knowing inventory, knowing fundamentally what the data and the stats are in your market. If you just did a handful of those things really well, good communication, professionalism, good dealings, knowing your inventory and your market, reading your contract, you should be able to wear whatever you want to wear, drive whatever you want to drive, all these kinds of things. And then after that, people stop at success. So it's like, oh, I want to make 100,000. They make 100,000 and then they get complacent in all of their growth. And I want to make 200,000 and they get complacent in their growth. I make 500,000, they get complacent in their growth. And for me, that kind of contrarian thing just never, all I did is when I got to whatever that next rung on the ladder was, all it did was afford me more of an opportunity to make a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Right.
And so at that point, it was like, all right, now I'm going to, I want to make it so that people don't feel like they have to come into this industry faking it.
Yeah.
I want to
That's
make
awesome.
it so that the consumer, I want to be a voice to the consumer, being able to see behind the veil and be able to pick apart that you're a phony
Right.
or you're real based on asking astute questions or being able to deliver good value. So we set out to build a brokerage that way. You know what I mean? I mean, if I can't go somewhere that I can hang my hat on that's going to do that for me, then I'm just going to go create
Well,
it.
you've built a
Yeah.
culture of, you know, what do we talk about? I forget which podcast it was. Know who you are, know who you aren't,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you can be
I
whoever
actually
you
think we
want,
talked
and
about you on that.
you know, I just think I think it's important, you know, if you get into this industry that you have to figure out who you are early on
Yeah.
and just roll with that, and then work really hard to build strong relationships and show up as who you are every time, not somebody different at different things.
Yeah.
Well, and working on what's next too. Like I think what the two of you both do is you're always evolving and thinking about what's next. Where like some people might work up to that 100,000, and they're not really thinking about what that next rung looks like until they've surpassed the 100, and so they find themselves setting like in stagnant water because they don't really know what they're doing next. So I think that that's what's cool too, is that you're always thinking about what's next or what could be next. And you know, there's always the constant, thank God you have a beard now, right?
No doubt. It's constant. Yeah. I mean, it's all what was going through my head when you were saying that is like, I don't ever allow myself to have arrived.
Right.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no arrival.
overrated.
There's no arrival. You know?
So how do you, like, inside the brokerage? It's the one thing that always like drives me insane. And I don't do it with my team at all. Is we're not driven on transaction count or GCI or any of this other stuff. I mean, what are some of the driving things that you guys do, like inside the brokerage with your culture that, you know, it sounds like it's a little bit more outside the box as far as driving those goals?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the first thing is there's a level of customization and individual planning with our agents. Not everybody. I mean, Zoe Tegas, one of my favorite humans on the planet. I was standing in front of the room 6 years ago teaching a class. Zoe's in the audience, and she's been in the business. She's a second, third generation real estate professional, and I'm ranting. I mean, veins poking out of my neck. I mean, I'm delivering a sermon, you know what I mean? Like, I'm letting it rip, and I'm like, $1 million this, and you're going to make $1 million. Zoe raises her hand. She goes, you know what, Brian? Not everybody wants to make $1 million.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And I was like, why the f*** not? You know what I mean? Like, you know?
That's totally.
And she
Zoe,
was
too.
like, I mean, sometimes people just want to make $75,000 a year and work 10 hours a week. And for the first time in front of a class, I was shook. I was like, wow. I was like on blast, right? Like, okay. And I'm processing my mind, like, and that's okay, right? So at the brokerage, individual planning, because not everybody wants to make $1 million.
Right.
Not
Right.
everybody wants to be the number one producer. Not everybody wants to. So we call it holding their future in the palm of our hand. We want to know what every agent in the brokerage is up to. What is it that you want to do? You know, I want to make $60,000 a year, work 10 hours a week, and supplement my husband's income so that he can retire sooner. Awesome. I remember an agent we sat down with that was like, my sole responsibility as a real estate professional is to pay for our 5 children's education. That was it. That was it. Purely, I'm working exclusively to pay for their education. What happens in that type of interaction with your agents is that every ounce of movement, inactivity, discipline, accountability, excitement, reward, all of those things come from, are you paying for your kids' education?
Right.
No, I'm not. Then what can we do to get you paying
Right.
for your kids'
Yeah.
education? It's not about GCI. It's not about metrics. It's not about gross commission earned, all of these types of things. It's about making sure that we're doing our job at North & Co. to make sure that you're paying for your kids'
I
education.
think it also gives them the opportunity, like especially inside your culture, where they can go in a different path.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like maybe it works for you to be over here to accomplish that with this team or with this. And so you have different paths that you can take people down rather than just the one road.
That's right.
Well, and you guys are totally thinking out. I mean, I think one of the biggest pieces, just getting to be a member of the tribe, right,
Yep.
for the years to get to observe, is there's this other element, like there's the grit and the articulation of the goal, But you guys are it's so important on the mindset piece. I've never seen a company like yours really work on mindset with your people.
It's the hardest business in the world.
Yeah.
It really is.
And it's not because it's the hardest thing to do.
No.
It's because there's so much competition.
Yes.
And there's 50,000 people that compete with you every day in your industry. And the consumer doesn't know how to tell the difference between someone who's 6 hours new and who's been doing it for 62 years. It just makes it brutal to have to weed through that information. And so for us, we have to help our people find themselves to confidence and belief and working themselves out of troubled situations and understanding there's no such things as problems. There are only circumstances and all these fun things, because, it's such a peak and valley business. The other thing that I have to really hang our hat on, that I do arrogantly say this, by the way, proudly, that we have from day one built an open source culture. And that's a really big deal in a real estate brokerage environment, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still a bunch of independent contractors. Yep. As much as we'd like to think they're all there to help each other and they still wave the same flag, they're all competing against each other. And in the way that we've grown our business, we've been pretty geographic specific, mostly Central Phoenix, Central Corridor, Central Scottsdale, now Southeast Valley. And so they're all kind of competing for the same territory as well. And we have had this matter of fact approach to anybody who decides to come to North & Co, that if you're unwilling to share and you're not open source with your business, and I'm talking about share everything, your compensation models, your recruiting strategy, your hiring process, firing process, et cetera, your scripts, anything you have, it's grounds for immediate severance. If I find out someone said, hey, can I take you to coffee sometime in the next month, and will you share this with me to help me get better? And you don't, heaven forbid anyone ever told on you, it would be grounds for severance. And people come on knowing that. And so the reason that I arrogantly state what I say about that is, if you're a brokerage of 100, 200, 500, 1,000 agents, and you don't have that yet, and you realize how powerful it is for us, you can't go back and change it. Right? You're doomed. Right. You have to start it from day one and build up to it. You can't course correct that Titanic, right? So that gives us a huge competitive advantage in the marketplace, because it lives itself out very real in our culture, where someone who only wants to make $65,000, $70,000 a year has access to somebody who's making $2 million a year and can go, hey, I only want to move the needle this much on my business. And they get to talk to somebody who's a legend, who will spend 15, 20, 30 minutes with them to move the needle in their business, and anybody else across the board in the business, which probably those two things, some level of customization and that open source, which what you end up having is you have 200 trainers. Right. In the organization. And how fast can you grow when you have 200 trainers?
Well, and I think that's, no matter where you're at, I think that's one of those things, North & Co, my home group, whatever it is, it's, do they have the ability to get into the business and then learn what everybody else is doing and figure out which path do you want to go down? Right. But I think the business is so confusing right now of where to go and what to do. And if you don't know what that looks like, how do you learn the different things? And, we had the conversation about the solo agent building a business and building an infrastructure versus the team concept. So I just thought it'd be interesting to have a little bit more of that conversation on your thoughts, because I know that you have all types in your brokerage. I see all types. Our good friend George Lawton next door, a monster when it comes down to building the team and all that other stuff. And there's me. I don't have no desire.
He's built a hell of a brokerage.
Yeah.
George has.
Totally.
Exactly.
The indie age, I call it the indie team, indie agent team. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. And it's, look, I've seen so many, the most emotionally dejecting path of leadership in this business is the traditional team lead. Okay, so I'm a team lead that has an assistant, potentially a transaction manager, and 4 or 5 agents, let's say. Okay, I'm going to pay them 60-40 or 70-30 splits on their personal business and 50-50 on their team-driven business. Right. It's like, this is the very traditional team model.
Yep.
The people who join that team are traditionally new agents, newer, or they're having a hard time.
Okay.
So I need to join a team until I'm not having a hard time anymore. And then guess what happens?
They bail.
Peace.
Right.
I don't need to pay those splits anymore. So, and it's right about the time that the monetary exchange of time for money starts to pay off for the team lead. So they've poured in a bunch of money, which is never seen. I mean, because if you've never made money or spent money on business infrastructure before, you can't appreciate it. Right. So it's never seen how much money was spent or what it took for the team lead to make the money to spend it in the first place. Or the late night calls, the early morning calls, the everything from pick me up, I'm down, to I've got a deal I need you to help me close, and all the money that you made that got you to a place where you don't need me anymore. Not only did I probably help pay for it, market it, teach you up along the way, I might have been a part in closing the transaction for you. And here you are about to get that first big paycheck, and we're going to have an exchange together, and you leave. And it happens over and over and over and over again. And I watch really successful, talented people waste huge amounts of time and huge amounts of emotion trying to build that machine, and rarely does it ever stick. Rarely does it ever stick. Where I do see it stick is in the luxury market. Why? Because there's only a handful of power players in that market, and the deals are so big that a 50-50 or a 70-30 split, if you close 6 or 8 a year, is a big year in the business. And so it tends to work. Am I going to go compete against my legendary boss, or am I just going to stay here? And scraps are really good. I don't mean to demean it, but scraps aren't scraps. You know what I mean? So it tends to be stickier in the luxury space. But in the high volume of unit space, it's a churn, that the churn of those agents. So we've started down this path with some of our agents of really building out the architecture of the indie agent team, which is you've got your rainmaker, and we started talking about this a bit earlier, which is, what is my number one money-making task? What is my highest and best use of time? And levering every other part of that out. And really breaking up. You can, in the buyer consult, you do your buyer consultation and you bring a showing agent, and that showing agent can do 90% of the work. They can, if they leave the buyer consult, they can set up the search. They can write the thank you card. Thanks for your time. They can send the follow-up email. They can schedule the first schedule of showings. They can go get showing feedback, to deliver back to the listing agents like a professional should do, and so on and so forth. I mean, look at all that time that frees up for the team lead. Really, I mean, you guys tell me, you've known the best power prospectors in the game. What is an amount of prospecting time, real power prospecting, like cold calling, 100 calls? How much time do you do that a day that's like useful before your day's over? I mean, power prospectors, 2 hours a day, an hour and a half, I think, 90 minutes.
Like 2 hour max.
So as a team lead, if you're out, following up with your sphere of influence, or you're calling canceled expireds, or you're calling for sale by owners, or whatever it might be to cultivate new business, you might do that for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And then if you could build systems where your transaction management team, your assistant, your marketing director or brand manager, your showing agent, your social media manager are really doing everything else, you really can work 2 or 3 hours a day as a team lead, and you can do $40-50 million in sales as a team lead. And by the time it's done, make a hell of a living, living a great life. The challenge, the potential perceived challenge there is you don't ever get to sell the business. I don't know how many teams are really sellable, in today's market. It's possible. It is possible in today's landscape, but it's pretty small. And then, the only other part is like, at what point do you get to, quote, step away from the business? And, we've seen guys like Russell Shaw and other people in the business who've been able to do that by way of building out that infrastructured team. And so for me, I really I'm watching some of our agents really win in this space of building the indie agent team and living really good lives and having really good connection in their personal lives with their families, and, going up to their cabin up north, which, those kinds of things, and going, how are you doing it as a solo indie agent with no team? Team meaning salespeople. And not only that, if you break down the profit and loss statement, there's far greater retained dollar, because if you're giving away 50-50 on all of those leads, but instead you're just going to a buyer consult and having a showing agent take over their own salary, the overall profit and loss statement shows something to be a better win in the business as well. So it takes discipline. It takes a business owner. It takes an entrepreneur to understand that process. It takes somebody who doesn't want to walk into that process saying, I hate managing people. If that's the case, don't be an indie agent team lead. You're going to have to stretch yourself in some of those areas. I'm not an operator. Do you want to be an operator? Are you capable of being an operator? Yeah, I am. Great. This can be a great model for you. I wasn't a great operator either. I did it well enough until I could hire someone better than me.
Right.
I was horrible at accounting, right? But I did it well enough so that, I could cover my bases come tax time until I could hire someone better than me. But ultimately, I really like this model.
Yeah, I just, you see it. I've tried it both ways. I've tried the agents, the splits, and then figured out like, I'm just not good at this piece because of the time and energy spent. And then, like you said, they go.
Yeah.
And, I always want to have that impact and influence in people's lives. And you know what? It's not so much the fact that they go, because that you're expecting it at some point in time. I think it's the way it happens is where it's just like, the knife, the knife in the heart.
Well, it's just always when it's good for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can't blame them per se either, right? It's like, it's getting good. They don't need you anymore. They don't.
Right.
So what? You expect them to hang around because you got them there? Well, I did that once in my life. And by the way, I'm proud of it. You know what I mean? But that takes a unique individual.
Sure.
I stayed in a past relationship maybe a little bit longer than I should have because I owed that person something. Obligatory relationships are dangerous sometimes. In that case, I'm proud that I did that. It felt right to me. I don't have any resentment or regret for having done that. But it takes a unique character to be able to do that. And not everyone's going to do it. And not everyone should,
Sure.
by the way. And you know what my punchline was for this person that I shared with them? They should move to this indie agent team and give things. I was actually coaching this same person who, we were talking about the showing agent. I like showing homes. And they had just lost a couple of team members, and we were helping to rebuild their business. And I said, it's the way of the indie agent team, right? And it's like, but I like coaching also. And I was like, then be a paid coach, right? Do you know why I like paid coaching for somebody like this person who's a killer? Is that I don't have to care if you do anything or not. You're going to pay me $1,000 for me to give you all my goods, and you can leave whenever you want.
Sure.
We exchange money up front.
Yeah.
I like that relationship, right? I got what I deserved today instead of hoping you were going to pay me later. And right about the time I was going to get the mutual benefit or reciprocity, you peace? No, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's, mindset shift as well of if you're coming into the business new, the mind, everybody always wants to talk about splits rather than you get to do the work to pay for your coaching and training.
That's right.
Down the road. Now, if you're building that, maybe some of these teams should build it out to where you're here for a year or so many transactions and then you're out because that's what you got paid to do, in those aspects. But I think it's a great place for an agent to start is find somebody that, you can do the splits and you can learn from with the upfront conversation of, I need your help to do this up until here.
Totally. Yeah. That split conversation is just a bane of my existence.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It is obnoxious.
Freaking hate it.
Well, because my thing is this, like you get people, like they come storming in. What are your splits?
Yeah. It's so true.
I'll split
What are
your
your
lip.
splits? You know what I mean? And I'm like, the first place I always go in the conversation is, first of all, I'm going to judge you, Bernie. No, I'm not. But I always look at their handbag if it's a female, because I'm always like, you can buy a $20 purse and you can buy a $6,000 purse. Why do you spend $6,000 on the thing to hold your money the same way the $20 one will do it? Right? That's always my question. And it's because you believe it has more value. That's it.
Yeah.
So before we even talk about splits, we got to figure out what the value is, right? So my next question is, what do you want? What do you want out of your business? And I had a gal the other day that I met with that doesn't matter. She was ready to make a decision to go to another brokerage. And right before she did, we were referred by one of our partners, said, hey, why don't you go talk to North & Co first? So she calls me, what are your splits? I've been in the business 14 years. I don't need to pay a ton of money. I've been to 19 different brokerages. I'm not kidding. She literally
Right
said,
there, you're
she
out.
literally
Wow.
had said she had been to 7 or 8 different brokerages in the last 4 or 5 years. What are your splits? I'm sick of paying. What are your splits? What are your splits? And I said, stop. I said, what do you want out of your business? I'm tired. Like, I get it. Me too. What are your work hours like right now? 60, 70 hour weeks. I've been doing it for 14 years. I said, how many hours a week do you want to work? I said, don't let your ego get in the way. You're not going to prove anything to me. I don't want to work at all. So we got that. So let's get it out of the way. Let's get it out of the way. You know what I mean? And she said 30 or 40 hours. I do love real estate, but 30 or 40 hours a week. I said, great. How much money do you want to make in 2021? She said $500,000. I said, great. So check this out. if I could get you to $500,000 in gross commission income working 30 hours a week, but our splits were 90% to me and 10% to you, would you do it? And she said, no.
Really?
And I said, hold on. I don't think you heard what I said. I'm not saying I'll take 90% of your 500 grand. I'm saying your 10% of what you get to keep is 500 grand you want. And you're going to get to work 30 hours a week. If I could, and I'm not saying I can, but if I could do that, would you pay me 90%? And she sat there and she sat there and she sat there and she still said no. And I said, well, good news. Our splits are 90-10 the other way. So you're in good shape. And I believe that we can get you there. It's going to take some time. But now how do splits feel to you? And for the very first time, she said to me, for the first time in my career, I understand what you're saying. And so it's just this conversation around people trying to identify with, you know what it tells you, Steve and Bern, is it's that people don't believe in the brokerage business. Right. They believe they're all the same. Yep. They believe every single one is the same. And so it's like, well, look, if it's all the same, why would I pay you more than what I'm willing to pay you? Instead of going, how are you different that makes me pay you more?
You said it best on Instagram a couple weeks ago. I was watching your stories when you were answering questions, and somebody threw in the, why would I join North & Co?
Yeah.
And I loved your response. It's like, join North & Co if you want to grow.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like, that was it.
That's
and
it.
I'm like, I love that. And I think that that's the same thing when I bring people into, not that I have a huge team or anything, but some of the things that I'm trying to get people to understand is that if you come here, it's the value of understanding the investment and the opportunity that you have in your real estate license and the opportunities that are here to do things that are outside the box and not the norm. I'm not bringing you in here. I don't want you on the phones 2 hours a day. Like, there are different ways that I'm going to do things if that's attractive to you.
Totally.
And if you want to see how the investment and the freaking crazy goes on behind the scenes, because that's what I do. That's my value proposition to you. If you want to go and do this and, track your 100 transactions and track your GCI and all that stuff, there's other places for you. I can give you some great recommendations. But that's, I think, where people need to look at brokerage-wise. Is always funny when you see in Facebook and stuff. Like, I'm thinking about switching brokerages. Why?
Yeah.
For what purpose at this point? And you've got some of the that network marketing brokerages right now, and some of those things that it's a perceived value. What am I getting for the trade?
Right.
Totally. And you obviously, you have such a distinct value add in this marketplace, and you just shared it with me so crystal clear. And I can tell you the answer I get from most people when we share that value proposition, Bernie, is interesting. Obviously. You know what I mean? Is the answer you get. And it's like, and then what are your splits after you just, and so anyway, it's one of those things and it's okay for me, right? We've said it often. Like, if Stephanie and I get to it pretty quick. We're like, if splits is the conversation, you're in the wrong spot.
Yeah, it's not the right.
We've ended meetings short many times because it's just split. You're never going to get it here, right? You're never going to get it because you're always going to be counting the split. You're always going to be counting the dollars instead of looking at the value.
Right.
We had an agent leave the brokerage 2 days ago. They did 14 million in sales in 2020. In 2019, they were somewhere around 3 million in sales. So they came on with us at the beginning of 2020 and went from 3 million to 14 million. The year before in 2018, they did approximately 6 million. So 6 million 2018, 3 million 2019, 14 million in 2020, and left. And when we said why, they said, I'm not sure I can duplicate what I did this year, and I can't afford to pay the splits.
Wow.
And so I said, so you've just accepted to me that you're going to do less. So if you did 100 grand less, and by the way, the delta between where they were going and where they were was 9 grand.
Wow.
So I was like, if you did $250,000 in gross commission income, which it was more than that, $250,000 in gross commission income, and you went down to 200 to save 9 grand, you wouldn't want to stay in the same ecosystem that took you from 170 gross commission income to 287. And they said, no.
Wow.
I mean, that's just that's what we're up to in this business.
Do you think that person is really telling you the real reasons why?
No, I don't. But still, I mean, if that's all you have to, by the way, it also
Doesn't
tells
really-
you the cliche
doesn't-
things to hang your hat on in this business. Split,
Totally.
split. I'm going to come in guns blazing talking about split, and I'm going to leave out the door guns blazing talking about split. It's just an easy place to go.
Totally.
So, but no, it's,
What do you see happening? I mean, like, what do you, like, if you look at the future of the agent model, brokerage model,
Behind the bushes.
behind the bushes. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what, the real estate landscape in Arizona, like, what are some of the things that you see happening?
Yeah, so I mean, I think
Or
there's
what
really,
happened?
to me, and I'm stealing this from Inman a few years ago. There was a gal on the stage way smarter than me talking about, they were in the merger acquisitions brokerage world, and she described it, and I agree, and I think there'll be some like subcategories of this. But she goes, I think in 5 years, and this was 3 years ago, there's going to be 3 distinct models. One is going to be the do-it-yourself transaction widget model. Like you're going to be able to go on an app on your phone, upload documents, find a title company, find a lender, DIY. And there's a whole generation of people that are used to doing most things that way, right? Sub 30, sub 25. And that's going to grow every day, right?
Yep.
They're going to see less and less value in the human and more value in the technology. So it's coming, and that'll be a very small flat fee. You pay $3.99 for this service, and you pay $5.99 for this service, and $9.99 for this service, right? Then you're going to have the assembly line model. Right. We know who that is, where you've got a chain of humans that you talk to along the way, and it'll be a discount type opportunity, brokerage opportunity where you get better than technology. You get, humans to talk to and 24-hour 800 number support. But that's really like what you get. Not anybody who's really out there, beating the street, high level, high touch, high value. And then there is the high value, high touch. That'll be the third service model. However, what I loved that she said, and it's putting our industry on blast, is whatever that high touch, high value is, has to significantly evolve. We are not doing what is necessary right now.
Agreed.
We aren't, right? So high touch, high value, you don't get to look in the mirror and go, well, that's what I am. I belong in that one.
Right.
No, you're just a current real estate agent that's scared to change.
Yeah.
You are not high touch, high value. You're just not one of the first two, right? If you want to be part of the third one, you've got to get on your toes right now, and you've got to start to change in a big, big way. What does high touch, high value mean to the consumer in rapidly changing times? Not what does it mean to you and your friends sitting around a coffee and a donut at a luxury, home tour session, talking about, the new cardstock flyer that's going to, shock the world. I mean, it's not what's going to happen. So come on, bro. You know what I mean? Like, with all due respect, you know what I mean? Like, it's a big monster, Again, I'm reading The Art of War. You don't go at the monster when the monster's its strongest.
Yeah.
You wait until there's an opening, and then you attack. Like, so they've got, but the challenge that I think, the short-term challenge that I think Zillow will be the high touch, high value, right? How can Zillow deploy an army of agents into the marketplace that are going to be specialists to the degree that they went to elementary school at the local school, then the high school at the local high school, and then the college at the college, and they're members at the country club. And, some of those things shouldn't matter as much as they do, but in that high touch, high value, highly networked space, those are absolutely going to matter. And there's going to be longevity in that model. I was talking to my business coach, Zanzibar, and I asked him about this one time, and I'm like, what's our runway as real estate agents? He's like, at least 25 years. And keep in mind, Zanzibar, he's not a real estate agent.
Right.
And when he started coaching me, he was like, I've never sold a house, meaning he had never sold his own primary residence. He only ever lived in one house. So he's like, I don't know anything about real estate. And I said, well, why do you say 25 years? And he goes, well, there's a whole demographic of people who've only done it that way for 25 years, and they have 25 years of life left.
Right.
And so they're going to always, we're always going to go to the gym until one day we're like, you know what, I'm going to build a home gym and never go to the gym again. Like, some people just like going to the gym, and that's their thing, and there's longevity for the gym for the perceivable future. At the same time, does the gym have to get hip with some of these, Peloton and the live interactive type stuff? Are they going to have to they're going to have to evolve into that space, or they're going to get left, everyone's going to go get a Peloton, right? So there's this part of what we're up to in that high touch, high value that's like, we're all playing from behind right now, and myself included. So that's the part we got to really pay attention to. These other things they're going to keep taking market share, but we're also going to keep gaining market share. Those things are going to fail. There's going to be people that have a horrible DIY experience. They're going to be like, I wish I would have had someone help me.
Well, I mean, that's always the thing that I look at and try to tell people when I have those initial consults is, why wouldn't I do it this way? Well, because it's fine as long as nothing goes wrong. And probably 90% of the time, something's probably not going to go wrong. But the one time you do it and it goes sideways real quick, you're not going to be able to recover from it.
Yeah, and you know what else really gives me comfort? I'll tell you where I see behind the bushes is all of these widget new strategies work perfectly in a market like we're in right now.
Right.
Perfectly. Yep. I mean, everything works right now. You're like, any widget gimmicky, $1,300 flat fee, put a sign and photos on the thing, stick a sign. Sure, that can work, right? We would all sit around and talk about the liability you've just opened yourself up to, but nobody wants to hear that. They just go, I don't want to pay a commission, right? Yeah. So no problem.
Do you know what the cost of a lawsuit is?
No, they don't. You know what I mean? Do they know the value of E&O insurance? Right. You know what I mean? No, they don't. Which, by the way, has been one of my more fun conversations lately. I'm going to list it myself. Like, okay, do you have E&O insurance? No, what's that? So there's that, but wait until the market corrects. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden now it's like, how do I negotiate this offer that's $100,000 under list? How do I get them back up to where I need to? And then the inspection when they're asking for a 47 line item Binzer after they just pounded you for $50,000 off your list price, like where we were 5 years ago. Right. When it was a dead heat, all out war to get a deal done. I mean, it was a dogfight to get into escrow, and then it was a dogfight during the inspection. It was a dogfight during the appraisal, and nobody wanted to close. And then it was, no, I took the keys with me to Michigan, and you can't have them. I mean, it was like everyone was just pissed. You know what I mean? Wait till that market comes back around. All these gimmicks will die. Most of them will die. For sure. So,
what's like the coolest thing this last year or now? Like, what's a cool story that affected you personally? What's something that was business? Because I know that there's been a lot for everybody, right? A lot of soul searching, but like, what's something cool? What's a good story?
COVID changed my life.
Yeah, I know.
I want to get emotional right now.
I know.
COVID gave me everything I should have done a long time ago. And the reason I get emotional is because I didn't do it. I suffered a lot the last few years, predominantly the loss of a relationship, my wife, my family. So it was a wake-up call, and it gave me time to process a lot of what I had done wrong, or that I didn't know I was doing wrong, and be better and find a different way. And I needed space and time to be able to do that. I needed space. I needed to care about myself more than I cared about the 200 people I care about every day. And I hadn't done it my whole career. So I disappeared. I did. I mean, I was engaged when I needed to be engaged, but I checked the out. I mean, I was gone. Most people don't know. I mean, I wasn't in Arizona 7 months in 2020, maybe longer. And I just unbecame myself. I listened to a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which was a profound game changer in my life. And then I listened to an audible by a spiritual leader named Ram Dass, that a lot of people have heard about. He's really kind of famous for hallucinogenics and spiritual journeys on hallucinogenic drugs, kind of Timothy Leary days, LSD and stuff. But he ultimately became a really amazing spiritual leader. And it's called Becoming Nobody. And the premise or the conversation that he carries through this audible is that, like, when we're kids, our parents tell us one day you're going to become somebody. Right. And then you go to the right school, and you're in the right classes, and you do the right extracurricular activities, and you don't do all the bad things that you're not supposed to do. And you go to the right college, and you go to the right fraternity. And then one day you're going to get a job somewhere, and you're going to become someone. And then at 42 years old, for me, it was 42 years old, I woke up, and Ram talks about how you wake up and you realize you don't like the somebody that you became. And I'm not going to say it that heavily. There are a lot of parts of myself I'm really proud of, but there are also a lot of parts of myself that I wasn't. And, I can say it openly in public, like, I wasn't born to be a real estate agent, but I put myself into that space, and God willing, it afforded me a lot of beauty, financial beauty, financial abundance and the ability to create impact in people's lives. But, the things that came along with that, the hustle grind mentality and, to some degree, I was certainly had a haircut that I was told I should have and a, pair of shoes I wore that I didn't want to wear. I bit for a while and there was an opportunity to listen to how to unbecome yourself. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. If you guys have checked that out at all. And really that's what I did last year. It was a hero's journey. And I think like step 3 or 4 of the hero's journey is the death walk. And it's where you leave that old self behind and you walk away from it. And at 42 or 3 years old, when you have an identity, you started with the Brian North, and that stuff that's there's weight to that. You know what I mean? There's weight to, often hearing like, oh, I ran into this guy, Johnny, yesterday, and he said he's friends with you, Johnny. No, I don't know anybody named Johnny, you know what I mean? And the weight that comes with all these people, and I shared this with Bernie yesterday, and I'll use this platform as well. I only bring this up for my agents because our agents deserve some security and certainty in their lives. That last Friday, someone came to me and said, dude, let's grab a beer. I owe you congratulations. And we sat down for a beer and he goes, so dude, congrats. I was like, on what? And he's like, well, I heard you were moving to California and you sold the brokerage. And I was like, really? How much did I get? Is it a lot? And my point in sharing that with you is you become somebody to the point that people think they know who you are. Mm-hmm. I was gone for 7 months last year. I probably talked to Bernie, who I would consider a really, really, really close friend, a half dozen times in a year. I probably talked to my mom 10 times. Who the fuck knows that I sold a brokerage and that I'm moving to California?
You gotta love the rumors in this industry. I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody. My mom doesn't know. Bernie doesn't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? That kind of creates uncertainty and insecurity for the people who work with you. True. That something could come. So what's a cool story? It's a little uncomfortable saying COVID was an awesome story for me last year, but COVID wasn't good. COVID just was the catalyst to me being able to go and search and disappear and sit. I mean, this year was the quietest I've ever been in my entire life. I had the maturity and the financial security to have quiet. I didn't have to worry about making a paycheck. And, but I had, all the coaching I've done in my life with Al Fuentes and Zanzibar and Kathleen Thoren and so many people who've been profound in my life along the way. I got to sit for 7 months and work on it all. I got to read and journal and practice my body language, practice my tone, practice reaction times. I mean, all of these things that when you're going so fast, you can't practice. And I get to, and then by the beauty of that, I get to share with my executive team, like, hey, you guys, if I react really odd or weird and it doesn't seem like me, I'm practicing. I can be that authentic with them. I do. You know what I mean? That intentional, like I'm really practicing undoing myself, unbecoming myself, breaking the habit of being myself. And it's allowed me to walk into an unknown. I went to the hospital. I went to the doctor yesterday because my body's not feeling good. I don't know what it is. My joints hurt, my lower back. I had what I think is an anxiety attack for the first time a couple of weeks ago. I just call it shortness of breath, tight chest, got really irritable. Felt like I had an adrenaline dump. Like my stomach kind of got queasy. And if somebody asked me, Robin actually asked me, like, what was wrong? What's wrong? Like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Your significant other wants to be question. Like, what's wrong? I was like, I don't know. And for the first time in my life, I don't care to know. I don't care to find out. I'm like, I care to find out, like, if my heart rate's okay, my oxygen's good, my vitals are all right, my back's okay. Like, I want to find that out. But in terms of like hurrying to go and work on and fix whatever's kind of broken, it's more just like, it's okay. Like, I'm just going to let this work itself out. It's going to be all right. But I'm going to go pay attention to my body. That's a cool story that happened last year and got me into this place where, like, I'm just paying attention in a whole new way.
I think that, the COVID thing, it's funny when we started talking, I'm like, oh, are we going to get through this whole podcast without mentioning COVID? Yeah. But as much, depending on who you talk to, and God, especially if you listen to media, as much negativity as around last year, there's also some extreme positivity for a lot of people. I know
Sure.
that, when I look at my journey, like I look at all of it, not that it necessarily had to do with COVID, but it did have to do with some of the stuff. But when I finally got the balls to just decide to stop drinking and make that choice in what we would think is like the hard year, like why would you do that during that time? And it's been an awesome journey. And I think some of it had to do with the quietness, the lack of, the human connection during the year where you did get to think, and why am I doing it? What does it look like? So I think there was a lot of positivity that came out of it, as well as negativity, depending on how you looked at it.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. As positive as it was, what it actually was for me was it gave me an opportunity to suffer.
Yeah.
And sit in it. And instead of burying it and not paying attention to it and making it go away and just pretending like it wasn't going to show up, and then at 53 years old having a heart attack and dying, like I got a chance to like really go and just sit with some shit and be like all at like in a concentrated effort. And on one hand you're like, wow, that's awesome, that sucked, you know what I mean?
I think you make some great points in that piece, that as busy as we become as humans, that it goes back to having some of that white space, coming full circle. You got to have some of that time either for enjoyment or quietness or just the thought process. I got back into, hiking in the mornings, and I love that 35 minutes of stillness and quietness and away from everybody, except for when Bernie's giggling when we hike on Saturdays.
I love it.
But I think it's important in the world that we are and how fast that we move, that we find that time, because I think the buildup, you're right, you get so busy that you start burying things.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, for me right now, it's my meditation. I mean, I meditate every single morning, at least 25 minutes. That's the minimum that,
how hard is that?
Well, that unto itself is an interesting question from this perspective. So, the value of meditation time is one of the many, is the value of non-judgment. Yet so many of us get into meditation and we're judging ourselves because we can't keep a quiet mind. You're like, oh my God, look, here I am trying to meditate. I can't even meditate.
All he's thinking about his next commission split.
That's it. I suck at everything. And what I've transitioned that. So how hard was it? It's the greatest part of my day now. It's equal to drinking my first glass of water. That's how important it is for me. I cannot have my day without my meditation. And there are some days where I'm completely empty, and emptiness is great, right? There are days when I can't stop it. It's going. But what I did do, what I've done recently is, if I notice that I can't get rid of my thoughts, like I'm just getting eaten up by thoughts, then what I do is I go from what I call a head to toe meditation. So I'm like, all right, start at my crown, work through my eyes, and I kind of ask God to bless bless my eyes to be able to see the things I can't see, right? I say sing with my words. Bless my mouth to be able to sing with my words, and I go through this whole kind of thing down to my feet, and it gives me something to think about, different than all those thoughts. So I can think about, bless my voice, bless my lungs with the air to breathe so I can stay alive and make more impact. Like I just go through this whole thing, and then that only takes about 5 or 8 minutes. And then when I get done with that, I go, okay, God, I'm open to whatever you want me to hear. And if it's the next commission split that's coming up, that was God's lesson for me at the time. And then when I'm done, I go and chart all those things down. So instead of, I just shifted it because I was judging myself. So I took it away from like, I'm a meditator. I'm at meditation too. I can't do anything right. You know what I mean? It was like, all right, well, and as I've really opened myself up to conversations with God, I call it, it's like, look, it's just, whatever's coming into my mind, it's like, instead of hating it or being mad at it or making it go away, especially if I'm in this like deep opening myself up space, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be thinking about right now. And I've had some of my greatest creative moments where I'm like, thank you, God, type it down in my notes. So, but if I can get really quiet, there's this interesting thing. I'll try and explain it, but I can't perfectly articulate, where when I get into meditation and I get to a 4 or 5 minute mark and I'm on, it's like a good run or a good workout or a good hike, and I'm on, it's like going in an elevator, if you can feel like, and the elevator caught and it's like dunk. You know what I mean? Like if the rope caught and it kind of will bounce, I will feel myself like hit and settle in, and then it just goes pitch black, and I can hang in that space until my little chime goes off, and then it's over. Those ones I come out and I'm like, oh, it's a good one. You know what I mean? But those are 1 in 5.
Yeah.
You know, the other ones are noisy. Yeah. So I'll go through my.
You know, you introduced me to Al. I don't know how long ago. Changed my life. I mean, I love him. I just love him. So meditating, visualization is something that I started doing through Al, through you. And it's so funny because no matter how long you do it, it's really hard to have those perfect visualizations without your mind wandering because we're human.
Yep, totally.
But I never, I always feel like I get something out of it even when I have distraction.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well,
it
how about
sets
this?
the pace for my day.
Give yourself a break. You just sat down for a minute to breathe.
Yeah.
You know,
Or ate.
Or
the full body scan. I call it a body. I like what you do better, but like do the body scan, like where you start from the top of your head and work your way down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
be really peaceful.
It's not better. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, you know, in a recent conversation I had with Al, where we were having a conversation on Clubhouse, we were talking about, short breathing. And I've caught myself doing it a lot lately where I'm shallow breathing. I'm not even breathing during the day. I'm just doing that all day long, which at some point your body, you know, guess what happens? You guys ever been where you're super stressed out and you go like that? That's your body going, dude, breathe, right? So even if you just sit down to close your eyes and just block out the noise and just prime your body with oxygen, you know what I mean? Like even if there's a million thoughts going through your head, it's so valuable. So yeah. But that's been a whole other thing. Wim Hof breathing. I don't know if you guys have ever investigated that. It's amazing. My friend Greg Mayer turned me on to it. I'd heard of Wim Hof for a very long time.
Right.
Wim Hof just a couple of years ago hiked Mount Everest in shorts. And
awesome.
It's by controlling his body temperature with breathing. And so that's another one, priming your body with oxygen and several other things. So
You're starting to take cold showers and baths and things, are you?
Yeah. I can't get my bath cold enough, unfortunately, and I can get a cold shower for a really short period of time. But my buddy Tyler Brown, who maybe you guys have met, he's a broker out in California. He's a avid surfer, and he built a cold plunge out of a Costco freezer, meat freezer, and I did some plunges in it. It's awesome, $350, and it's awesome cold plunge. So I want to get there.
I tried some of the cold showers in the pool, and it just
I know.
There's just something about it.
I know. It's fun. But yeah.
Well, hey, you mentioned it. What are you doing on Clubhouse?
Yeah, anything I can do. So really my thing right now is, you guys can hear, right? I am exercising myself, my humanness right now in every single way, like health, wellness, diet, reading. I'm in this space right now where I have this other fun game I'm playing, which is if I have a staunch opinion about it, I go do it. Meaning like that's where the Bible came from. So it started with, I was saying the universe. Man, the universe has conspired to create abundance for me. And I was like, why am I not saying God? I mean, it's the same. Like, why am I not saying God? Because I'm scared to say God. Am I scared to say God? No, I'm not. I'm scared of religion.
Yeah.
Why are you scared of religion? Well, because everyone judged you at church when you were a kid. Okay. Well, so I'm going to go buy a Bible, start reading it, and go to church. Like that was it. You know what I mean? Like, cause I had an opinion about it, and it's like, I'm just challenging the other side. I read this, it's a Japanese proverb. I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically a saying about like, if you see a rock in the river, the part that's sticking out, always remember that there's an opposite side of the rock that's under the water, like in the mud, right? So like you have to flip the rock over to get both perspectives. That rock has two perspectives, and we always get stuck in one perspective. And so there's this thing for me where I'm just exercising every part of myself. So what are we doing on Clubhouse? Anything that I'm exercising myself on, that I have somebody that's adding wisdom to me in that, I call them and go, you want to get on Clubhouse and talk about it? I just want to share anybody, because I believe that most people are self-auditing themselves.
Oh, for sure.
I do.
Yeah.
I believe, and it shows up in the form of judgment. Okay. They're self-judging themselves, but they're self-auditing themselves, right? So they are going like, man, I just watched too much TV, right? Or man, I'm eating too much ice cream. Or man, I'm
too many small cookies.
Yeah,
Girl Scout cookies.
You know what I'm saying? Like we all have that thing that we're like, I wish I could be sweeter to my kids, or I wish I was, more affectionate toward my significant other, or whatever that thing might be. We're all, but so few people either A, don't have the discipline, the will, or their ego's too big to start doing something, or they just don't know where to start. And so I feel like the best value I can add is to get on a screen or a microphone and start crying and yelling and cussing and telling you how up I am and how bad I am and all the shit I'm working on and how broken parts of me were to fix the parts that aren't. And if people can hear that, then I'm hopeful they'll go, look, if he can, if he can do it, if there's a perception of him that he's got it all figured out. It's the biggest problem with social media. All I want to do is go on there and just say, I'm broken just like you. You know what I mean? I've got problems too, and I'm working on my and here's what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. That's the thing. You know what I mean? So try and just it's like my way of grabbing someone by the shoulders and shaking them. I'm doing the same thing. So.
I think that's the grueling part of our business is the, judging ourselves. I do it. Like when I post something, I'm judging it. When I'm looking at pictures, I'm judging it, going through all that stuff. And I started getting to the point that when I post something, my only prayer and thought process is, what am I posting? And I just hope that it impacts or influences one person, whether they comment, like, or do anything else. Mm-hmm. Like, is it just being impactful? Mm-hmm. When we started doing the podcast, it was just about how can I take some of the things and some of the stories and some of the that I've experienced in life and help people through it, because post people, which, I love getting on this topic, is that most people go through hard times and tough and they don't understand why, because they never realize, like when you talk about God, I'm a big faith person and that stuff. And I think, people don't realize that God allows us to go through certain things in order to prepare us for other things in our lives. And I always looked at it, not at the time, but later. And I tell people, I'm like, you know what? God allowed me to go through foreclosure and lose all my early on in my life before it was popular for everybody else, so that I could help all the people that were crying about it and being upset about it and help them through it, because I had already gone through it. Yep. I'll never forget being at this appointment when the clients were like, we've got $6,000 worth of credit card debt. I'm like, well, I got $1 million that I owe American Express. Do you want to trade?
That's right.
It can be worse.
Totally. Yeah. You got it.
So it's trying to figure out, like, how do you help people through your story rather than the judgmental stuff. Yeah. So it depends on how you're perceiving.
And for me with social media, that's been the thing where when I'm in a conversation or I just hang up a phone call or I just finished part of a book that I'm reading and I'm like, man, that was a big help for me. I'm just going to go push go on the camera, light the lights on in my office and put my phone on a tripod and push play and just go, here's what I just experienced. I don't know if it's going to help anybody else or not, but it helped me. I just wanted you to know, that's it. And we'll see. Hopefully it'll make some impact. But if not, it's been a great place for me to have an outlet for. It's going to end up being like a journal, I think. It'll be a historical track record. I'll be able to look back in 3 or 4 years at those posts and go, dude,
different form of a journal.
Oh my gosh, look at where you were at that time, like you poor sap, or like how do I get back there? You know what I mean? So it's going to be an interesting deal, but it's a fun ride right now. Yeah, I'm enjoying life.
What's next?
What's next? I'm going to go snowboarding tomorrow, I think. Pretty stoked about that.
Maybe later today.
Last night I was up late shopping for a new surfboard. That's going to be my treat for post-shoulder surgeries. What's next for me in life? I want to buy another house in California. That's a vision for me right now. I'm working on really expanding my network into, I want to be, I want to get into, I want to surround myself with people who I don't know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, what did you just say? I don't even know what you're talking about. Right. And I don't know what that means, but I'm making time for that right now, which is cool. So I'm really stretching myself into a new network of people. I'm also going backward. I'm re-engaging like old high school friends and, like that, don't forget where you came from mentality, just going back and really dipping into that. And then on the business front, I'm best as an educator for the brokerage. I mean, I love teaching. I'll be more of a teacher than I will be a coach, right? I won't be doing a lot of one-on-one at the brokerage, but I'll be doing a lot of teaching. Certainly growing and formulating what is just expanding upon what has helped us really be great. My executive team has been so amazing. They've just afforded me so much creative time, which is a blessing and a curse for them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it is, like, because it's just like Stephanie said, did you hear yesterday? We were in a meeting yesterday, and
Yes.
she just goes, Brian, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. She's like, I can just only take so much. You know what I mean? Like, I just stop. So there's that. And then really I'm called, and you've heard me say this before, Steve, but I'm really called to make a difference in young adults' lives.
Yes.
And I'm calling it, I'm going to be an identity guide. And all that really is I'm still searching for my own identity. So I get to practice real time, except for I've done this before. Right. So I'm practiced at it, where I feel like 18, 19, 20 to, ish years old. Those were really dark years in my life, where I was a superstar baseball player and I was a, A-lister in high school, whatever that means.
Right.
And then baseball was over, and so was my life. So was my identity. Poof, it was gone. I didn't know who I was and didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was starting to try and keep up with my very best friend went to Boston University to get a biomedical engineering degree. And not one person in my entire family had ever been to college. I didn't think I could go to college. I didn't know how to afford college. I was terrified of college. I remember thinking, how do you find your locker on a campus that big? That's how naive my thinking was. And my best friend was going to get a biomedical engineering degree at Boston University. And so for me, I remember being so lost, just super lost. And I'm kind of there now, except I love it. I'm excited about being lost, where then I was mortified. And so it's this concept of, and doing a lot of reading, a lot of studying right now about how we find ourselves in human form. So when our soul enters into human form, it's when suffering begins. We don't suffer in our soul form. We suffer in human form.
Right.
And so my real mission is to help people find how to find joy in their suffering, because we're going to suffer. So how do we enjoy it? And I love my life. You see me cry 5 or 10 minutes ago, but I love every second of that crying. I love every second of what I'm learning in that suffering. I love that COVID afforded me an opportunity to go sit and suffer for 7 months and find all the joy and beauty in it, so that I can share it with everybody else, so they don't have to suffer the same way I did, or that they can just find the same way to joy.
I love all of that. But going back to, like, yeah, we did talk about the identity in the younger humans, specifically the guys and those types of things, is that, it's one of the things that I've been very present with my teenagers, but not just them, but it's seeing their friends and the people that they bring over, and the school's not teaching them right now.
Right.
And they have known some of the broken homes and some of the places they come through and some of the opinions they're being fed. And you're like, how do you help them see some of the different things, or understand that college is an option, but why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to go to college? Is this something that's being fed to you? It's something being forced. Yeah, I could go on pretty big rant, like with the whole education stuff right now. Just watching my kids and watching what's going on, especially with COVID this year, you're looking at online stuff going, what a bunch of horse.
Yeah. Totally.
Like,
well, yeah, I mean, it's evolution. It's something that needed evolution for a long time, and COVID disrupted it. And now it's time. I mean, formal education system is just going to get left behind if they don't pivot. They don't continue to pivot quickly. They're going to have to upgrade everything, including teacher pay. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You can't really ask for the education a better education to be delivered if you can't provide better educators, or at least pay them to want to educate better. So in every facet, it's going to have to change for sure. But yeah, man, I mean, it's across the board. I think, kudos to those who are doing a good job with parenting right now. But if you have a late teenager or early, young adult, and they're, 19, 20, 25 years old, I don't know how to parent. You know what I mean? Like, how do I parent when almost all communication is technological driven? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what cyberbullying or how cyberbullying is dealt with. I don't know.
Isn't that the middle finger emoticon?
Yeah, exactly. How can we really, when we don't know what we don't know? I mean, our kids have 5 Instagram accounts, 4 of them, which I don't know. And the one they're like, hey, Mom, this is my Instagram account, and all this other, Snapchat and, TikTok, and what do they all really mean? And are they stealing all of our, are they is it Big Brother watching our kids through TikTok, and what's disappearing that I don't know about on Snapchat?
Yeah.
And just, I mean, you know, so at the end of the day, what can I help with? Decision making.
Right.
I think, you know, that's
Yeah.
been one of the things, you know, because I know you've got younger kids. What are they like?
13 and 10.
13 and 10. So, you know, mine are going to be, my youngest will be 16 on Monday. It's the open relationship that we have in our family and our household that keeps them from creating that crap. Because it's like, I remember growing up, you would hide the things, you know, I remember like Bobby Brown CDs and things that swore and cussed and Two Live Crew and some of that other stuff. And, you know, you're hiding all that stuff because, you know, it's...
Because you didn't want anybody to know that you like Bobby Brown.
It was a strict household if they were hiding
Right,
Bobby Brown,
right.
just so you know.
I mean,
but,
but you're being judged,
Yeah.
right? You don't really know as a kid, but we've been through it with our kids. Like, just be open, you know, because they'll show us something that might be funny. You're laughing under your breath, but you're like,
Right.
why it's not. But I'd rather them constantly be up on it
Yeah.
and talking about it, because it gives us a chance to formulate and help them formulate some of the opinions and some of the things, and at least have open conversation. But the way I grew up was, it was, this house is run this way,
Yeah.
and, you know, very religious, and all that stuff was great. But I think it hindered the relationship with my parents as I was growing up, because there was a lot of hiding things. So you get back to the Instagrams and the other thing, you're hiding things for fear of, you know, being in trouble and judgment and what's going to happen if they find out, rather than at least being able to have the conversation about it.
yeah, I agree. I mean, also, I mean, I have to give credit where it's due. It's not just an open conversation, being open, that works. I mean, we all knew that parent who let their kids drink and
Yeah.
party and do all this stuff. I mean, there's got to be trust with your parent, you know, before they can be open with you too. So, I love our conversations about fatherhood and parenting. It's my favorite thing to do in life. You know what I mean? I love my
have 2
dudes.
dogs.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
They're
So,
such troublemakers.
yeah, this is fun.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. And
You're the best.
you got any last?
super
Why is your
grateful.
microphone in your lap?
I don't know. It just keeps falling. I
Yeah.
don't know.
By the way, who's the stage producer around here? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I love it.
I'm super grateful. It's just, you're always so awesome to talk, and just always giving a lot of like insight, and you're super vulnerable, and it's just, you're the best.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
love
thank you.
get one shot. You know what I mean?
That's what
it.
Eminem said.
Yeah,
You
that's
got one
it.
shot.
I
What's your
woke up.
favorite song?
That is my
Woke
favorite.
up this morning. First thing was like, I woke up and I had a headache this morning. I don't ever have headaches. I woke up this morning with a headache, and I went, oh wait, but I get to breathe. I was like, you know what I mean? Like, fuck, I get a shot today. What am I gonna do? Let's go. So
You're going
That's
snowboarding.
awesome.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. There's
Hope is not a strategy.
real.
You're
No,
going.
you're right. No. Yeah, I am going somewhere.
You're going somewhere,
Yeah,
for sure.
obviously. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, sincerely, you guys. I mean, to be your first, we're gonna look back at this one for sure, and you guys are gonna make a massive impact in the industry and with the people you guys bring on here, with the way that you guys lead with your hearts and your critical thought and the experience that you guys have in the industry. It's gonna be bad to watch what you guys do here. So I'm stoked to be the first one, for
Where
sure.
where can everybody find you? Like, where are you doing most of your stuff right now?
Yeah, Brian C. North on Instagram. Pretty straightforward. That's where I'm doing most everything.
Okay.
And then Brian North on Clubhouse, and soon BrianNorth.com. Yeah, that's coming. That's in the works right now.
Nice.
So we're on our way there.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you, guys.
We're out of here till next time.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
You know it.